This hearing of the subcommittee will come to order. Today, the subcommittee examines the State Department's rewards programs and proposals for the expansion of that program. The State Department currently runs 3 different programs which offer reward money. There's the Reward for Justice, Narcotics Rewards, and the War Crimes Rewards Program. Monetary awards are offered to those individuals who come forward, often at great personal risk, of course, to provide information that helps locate and capture terrorists or drug traffickers or certain wanted war criminals. The Terrorism Rewards Program, which dates back to the Reagan administration and the bombing at the Beirut embassy, is the most recognized of the 3. Besides paid newspaper and radio spots, the program uses billboards, it uses posters and flyers to publicize reward offers. And given the prominence of smoking overseas, they also use matchbooks, such as these, which are distributed among people. And several years ago, the program, of course, faced some criticism that its publicity campaigns were poorly constructed, so we look forward to hearing today about how that's changed. As we will hear today, all 3 programs can point to some significant victories. Terrorism rewards help locate and put Ramzi Youssef behind bars. The Narcotics Rewards Program helped nab FARC commanders in Colombia and drug traffickers operating from Venezuela to Thailand. The War Crimes programs have led to the arrest of some of the worst war criminals. A reward on your head creates for the individual significant angst. As the State Department will testify, one captured narcotics target told the DEA that he could no longer trust anyone in his organization after a $5 million reward was offered. He felt, he said, like a haunted man, and given the destruction many of these characters do to the globe and to the people in their country, this is money well spent. But we live in a much different world than the one of the 1980s, when these programs were first designed. Today, transnational criminals are diversifying, and they're looking to sell anything to anybody. It could be arms, it could be intellectual property, it could be people. And one such arms trafficker was Victor Bout, who supplied weapons to insurgents on both sides of a war, to militias, to terrorists around the world, until his conviction in federal court. Reportedly, the Narcotics Rewards Program helped to bag the merchant of death, as he was called, Victor Bout. The overlap between the networks employed by criminals and employed by terrorists is growing. To keep pace, I've introduced legislation, H.R. 4077, co-sponsored by Ranking Member Sherman and Subcommittee Member Poe, that would target transnational organized crime figures with a rewards program. Just as important, the legislation allows the rewards program to target those who are wanted for genocide or war crimes or crimes against humanity. In other words, the world's worst human rights abusers. A likely target of this new War Crimes Authority would be Joseph Kony and the top commanders of the Lord's Resistance Army. This group has terrorized northern Uganda and Central Africa for 2 decades with unspeakable crimes. In accordance with U.S. policy, a small team of U.S. troops are currently in the field helping local forces hunt down the individual who has captured over 30,000 children over the years. The women he's turned into, the girls he turned into concubines, the boys into child soldiers. Our U.S. troops believe a rewards program aimed at Kony could bolster their efforts. That could generate the intelligence, and that could boost the defections, and that could assist, because the ultimate work here is going to be undertaken by the Ugandan forces, who will basically either remove Tony from the battlefield and bring him to the bar of justice, one way or the other. The subcommittee looks forward to the testimony today and advancing this important legislation to the House floor, and I'll now turn to Ranking Member Sherman for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing on examining the State Department's reward program and how those programs can be expanded. The State Department currently runs reward programs in 3 areas: the Reward for Justice program, focused on terrorism; the Narcotics Rewards program; and the War Crimes Rewards program, which targets war criminals subject to certain tribunals. I support the State Department's rewards programs, which have been effective in leading to the capture of some of the most reprehensible individuals. We save innocent lives, we save taxpayer money in the long run by rewarding those who give us information, often at great risk to themselves. I support expanding this program. I've co-sponsored your bill, H.R. 4077, which is bipartisan legislation which would expand the program to target transnational organized crime and those wanted for the most serious human rights abuses, all for reasons you well explained in your opening statement. These efforts these programs began in the 1980s. The programs were designed by a diplomatic security agent who investigated the 1983 U.S. Embassy bombing in Beirut, perpetrated by Hezbollah with direct help from Iran. The program was expanded to cover narcotics traffickers and some war criminals in the late 1980s. Today, rewards go up to $25 million. $25 million is the reward for information leading to the capture or death of key al-Qaeda leaders, most notably bin Laden, but also including Ayman al-Zawahiri. The most recent example of the State Department offering a terrorism reward was for Yassin al-Suri, identified as a key fundraiser for al-Qaeda. According to the State Department, al-Suri has operated out of Iran since 2005. He is supposedly under house arrest, but that may be a mistranslation. They may have meant special guest of Iran. And he's providing al-Qaeda network with transportation for operatives and access to money. Al-Zawahiri is one of 3 individuals the U.S. government is offering a $10 million reward for. The other 2 are Mullah Omar, the Taliban leader in Afghanistan, and Abu Dua, the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq. And one of the questions I'll ask of our witnesses is whether we should go even higher on those rewards or others. The State Department's Rewards for Justice program focused on terrorism is the most recognized of the 3 rewards programs. The State Department, through the Secretary of State, may offer rewards for information that lead to the arrest or conviction of anyone who plans or carries out acts of terrorism against Americans at home or abroad that prevents such acts from occurring, that lead to the location of key terrorist leader or disrupts terrorist financing. The State Department maintains a list of current reward offers on its website, which is now available in nearly 30 languages. In addition to newspaper, radio, and TV ads in foreign media, the program utilizes billboards, flyers, postcards, and the well-known matchbook cover. I see these matchbooks are in English, and I hope very much that a far greater number was created in Arabic, not that we need to worry about any of the 3 guys pictured on this particular matchbook at the present time. Many of us have seen these matchbooks, and this is one of many creative ways to reach out to those who may seek the reward. The State Department takes measures to protect the identity of a reward recipient's program and the recipient's immediate family, of course. The State Department must report to Congress the total amounts spent on the program. Reward payments are often not publicized, and those who receive them are eligible for participation in the U.S. Witness Protection Program. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses whether an explicit offer of a U.S. visa for a family or even an extended family should be part of certain posted rewards. No one, a lot of people want money, very few want a death sentence, and they may have some such in their home country. Let's see. I'm going to skip ahead to a discussion of the chairman's legislation, the Department of State Rewards Program Update and Technical Corrections Act of 2012. This would expand the reward programs to confront international organized crime and those wanted for the most serious human rights abuses. The chairman's bill would allow the State Department to pay for information leading to the arrest or conviction of individuals engaged in international or transnational organized crime or the prevention or disruption of related criminal activities. The State Department officials have identified the lack of authority to target organized criminals with rewards as a major gap in the counterterrorism efforts. The bill would also allow the Department to use the rewards program to target others indicted by international hybrid or mixed tribunals for the most serious human rights abuses, including genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Once again, Mr. Chairman, I commend you for this legislation. Happy to co-sponsor it, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses.
Thank you. Any other opening statements? Mr. Conley, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 1984 Act to Combat International Terrorism established the State Department's Reward for Justice program, one of 3 rewards programs the State Department administers. The law allows the Secretary of State to authorize rewards for information that lead to the arrest or conviction of anyone who plans, commits, or attempts international terrorist acts against U.S. persons or property, prevents such acts from occurring in the first place, leads to the location of a key terrorist leader, or disrupts terrorist financing. The rewards program has led to the apprehension of Uday Hussein, Qusay Hussein, and Ramzi Youssef, among others. In fact, since the inception of the Rewards for Justice program in 1984, the U.S. has paid more than $100 million to 70 people who provided credible information that put terrorists behind bars or prevented acts of international terrorism. The RFJ is not the only rewards program in states' law enforcement toolkit. The Narcotics Rewards Program, also administered through the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement in the state, offers rewards of up to $5 million for information leading to the arrest and a conviction of major narcotics traffickers who operate outside of the U.S. Over $71 million has been awarded to individuals who provided such information leading to the arrest or conviction of major narcotics traffickers. Last is the War Crimes Rewards Program, which the State Department's Bureau of Diplomatic Security administers in conjunction with the Office of Global Criminal Justice. This program is designed to bring to justice fugitives sought by the UN International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Through the introduction of H.R. 4077, Chairman Royce has proposed expanding the State Department's rewards programs to confront transnational organized criminals and individuals wanted for the most recent human rights abuses. An example of somebody who might be targeted under such a proposed expansion is Joseph Kony, head of the Lord's Resistance Army in East Africa. This sounds like a common-sense expansion of the program, especially given the committee's record on Joseph Kony. I look forward to hearing more about the bill, including our witnesses' thoughts on how expanding the program might facilitate their mission, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Well, we're joined today by 3 representatives from the State Department. First is Mr. Robert Hartung. He serves as Assistant Director for the Threat Investigations and Analysis Directorate in the Bureau of Diplomatic Security. In this capacity, he oversees all diplomatic security programs that analyze or investigate or disseminate information on threats directed against U.S. diplomatic personnel around the world. Before becoming a diplomatic security special agent back in 1985, he worked as a staffer to former Senator Paul Tribble of Virginia. Ms. Brooke Darby is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. During her career, she has been responsible for numerous programs in the Bureau, including the Criminal Justice Capacity Building program in the Balkans, the program in Afghanistan, and the one in Iraq. She has also served on the National Security Staff. We welcome her. And we have Ambassador Stephen Rapp, who heads the Office of Global Criminal Justice. Prior to his appointment, he served as prosecutor of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, leading the case against Charles Taylor. During his time serving the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, he led the team that won the first convictions in history for public incitement to commit genocide via the media. They hate broadcasts that were broadcast out over Rwanda. So it's good to see the ambassador again, and I might add we're awaiting the announcement of the Charles Taylor verdict, hopefully in April. It's slated to come down, and it's about time. So we thank our witnesses all for being with us, and I will remind them that their complete testimony will later be included in the record. So if they keep their oral presentation to 5 minutes, that would be appreciated by the committee. We'll then go to questions. So we'll begin with Mr. Hartung. Thank you.
Chairman Royce, members of the subcommittee, good afternoon. I am honored to appear before you today to discuss the role the Bureau of Diplomatic Security plays in the fight against international terrorism through its Rewards for Justice program. I would like to thank you for your continued support and interest in our program, as this collaboration helps enable diplomatic security fulfill its worldwide mission. Operating from a global platform in 25 U.S. cities and 159 foreign countries, the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, or DS, ensures that our country can conduct diplomacy safely and securely while assuring the integrity of our borders. DS plays a vital role in protecting U.S. embassies and personnel overseas, investigating passport and visa fraud, securing critical information systems, and fighting terrorism. To this end, Diplomatic Security's Counterterrorism Rewards Program, known as RFJ, is considered by the Department of State to be one of the U.S. government's most valuable assets in the fight against international terrorism. The mission of the program is to prevent terrorist acts, to disrupt terrorist planning, and to bring terrorists to justice in a court of law, U.S. or foreign. The secondary goals of the program are also important: to deter terrorist operations, to decrease geographic safe havens for terrorists, and to restrict terrorist freedom of movement. Rewards may be paid to individuals who provide information leading to the arrest or conviction of those conspiring, attempting, or committing an act of international terrorism against U.S. persons or properties, or those aiding or abetting in the commission of such acts. A reward may also be paid for the information that prevents such acts from occurring in the first place, for information identifying or locating those holding key leadership positions in a terrorist organization, and for the disruption of the financial mechanisms of a foreign terrorist organization. Since the program began in 1984, RFJ has garnered a number of successes throughout the years. RFJ has paid over $100 million to more than 70 individuals who have provided vital information. Although the program's efforts are often classified for the safety of its participants, I can share some of its landmark cases with you today. In 1995, RFJ paid a $2 million reward to a source that provided information to diplomatic security special agents in Pakistan for the location of Ramzi Yousef, mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Pakistani authorities, assisted by diplomatic security agents, arrested Yousef in Pakistan and extradited him to the United States. He is currently serving a life sentence in prison in Colorado. In 2003, RFJ paid a $30 million reward for information on the exact whereabouts of Uday and Qusay Hussein. The 101st Airborne Division conducted an operation to capture these individuals. A 4-hour firefight ensued, which resulted in the deaths of the two brothers. In this instance, an RFJ campaign was initiated, and in 18 days, the source came forward, the fastest result in RFJ history. And in 2007, the program paid a $10 million reward to courageous Filipino citizens who provided information on the locations of Abu Sayyaf group leaders Gaddafi Janjalani and Abu Sulaiman. These two notorious high-ranking leaders of the Abu Sayyaf group were killed by the armed forces of the Philippines as a result of information provided by the sources. Last year, DS generated 4 new reward offers. These offers were for the following individuals: Harakat ul-Jihad al-Islami leader Ilyas Kashmiri, North Caucasus-based Caucasus Emirate senior leader and military commander Doku Umarov, Al-Qaeda in Iraq leader Abu Dua, and Yassin al-Suri, a senior Al-Qaeda facilitator and financier based in Iran. RFJ's $10 million reward offer for al-Suri was the first made for a terrorist financier. As is evident, Mr. Chairman, the DS Rewards for Justice program is and will remain a valuable asset to the U.S. government in its fight against international terrorism. RFJ's mission to prevent terrorist acts, disrupt terrorist financing, and bring terrorists to justice remains paramount. RFJ is engaging new media, new partners, and developing new practices in its effort to meet the challenging security situation we face in the ever-changing world. Every day, in all corners of the globe, the men and women of the Bureau of Diplomatic Security continue to work tirelessly to bring terrorists to justice. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Darby.
Chairman Royce, Ranking Member Sherman, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation to discuss the Department of State's Narcotics Rewards Program, how it helps to bring major violators of U.S. narcotics trafficking laws to justice, and your legislation to expand the reach of our rewards program to capture other transnational criminals. The Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL for short, which I helped to lead, is well known for our efforts to build the capacity of foreign governments to fight crime. We also administer key anti-crime tools like the Narcotics Rewards Program. Let me start where the Narcotics Reward Program began and then tell you a bit about how it works. In 1986, Congress authorized the Secretary of State to offer rewards for information leading to the arrest or conviction of major narcotics traffickers outside of the United States. The rewards program quickly proved to be a valuable tool for U.S. law enforcement, helping to develop critical information on key targets, as well as putting pressure on drug trafficking organizations, disrupting their activities, and leaving them more vulnerable to law enforcement efforts. Every step of the program is closely coordinated with U.S. law enforcement agencies who serve on the Narcotics Rewards Program Committee. And in fact, the program operates from the field up. Generally, U.S. federal agents working overseas propose that the program target a fugitive from justice that they are working to apprehend. The program committee validates each request in Washington and develops an approach to publicize a reward where appropriate. When an informant's information has proved useful to U.S. federal agents, the agents can submit a request that a reward payment be made to the informant. The Interagency Review Committee then weighs a variety of factors, including the importance of the trafficker targeted, the role played by the informant, details of the arrest or interdiction operation, risks taken by the informant to assist in effecting an arrest or interdiction, and the suggested reward amount. If the Secretary of State agrees with the committee's recommendation to pay the informant, the Secretary will then seek concurrence of the Attorney General before transferring any funds to the U.S. law enforcement agency managing the informant. INL has developed a rigorous certification process for law enforcement to validate and confirm when payments have been made. We then notify Congress in classified form of each reward payment before closing our case file. The Narcotics Rewards Program has helped to bring many important narco-traffickers to justice. One example is Arturo Beltran Leyva and members of his organization, who not only distributed shipments of hundreds of kilograms of narcotics to the United States, but also were culpable for the rising violence just south of our border in Mexico. That organization is now in shambles as a result of successful law enforcement operations, informed by our program, to take down the head and other members of the organization. In some cases, the perceived or actual threat from the publication of a reward has driven criminals to seek protection from U.S. law enforcement. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, one captured trafficker who was the subject of a $5 million advertised reward told DEA agents that after he was sought by the Narcotics Rewards Program, he began to distrust everyone, and his ability to maintain control of his organization was diminished, and he felt like a hunted man. Our U.S. and foreign law enforcement partners recognize the Narcotics Reward Program as a valuable tool to help bring drug traffickers to justice and disrupt their operations. Since 1986, however, transnational criminals other than narcotics traffickers have escaped the reach of the rewards program. On July 25th, President Obama introduced a national strategy to combat transnational organized crime, which describes significant and evolving threat to the United States and global community that these transnational criminal organizations pose, and advocates for additional tools to counter the threat. The legislation that you have introduced, Chairman Royce, and that you have co-sponsored, Congressman Sherman, is such a tool. By updating the successful rewards program to include transnational organized crime targets, you will extend the reach of justice to major criminals who have transcended borders with near impunity. These criminals victimize Americans through internet crimes, launder money, traffic arms and people, and pirate America's intellectual property. To illustrate the impact of these illicit activities, in an average year, the United States seizes hundreds of millions of dollars in counterfeit goods, estimated to be a mere fraction of what's produced worldwide and imported for sale into the United States. Counterfeit products wreak havoc on our economy, and in some cases, such as counterfeit pharmaceuticals, jeopardize the health and safety of our citizens. Under the President's strategy, we are committed to pursuing transnational organized criminals and their networks wherever they hide across the globe. Our Treasury Department has already designated 4 major transnational criminal organizations, the Yakuza, the Brothers Circle, Los Zetas, and the Camorra, for financial sanctions. With your support, a future transnational organized crime rewards program could help U.S. law enforcement do much more, dismantle these networks, and apprehend those who lead them. Chairman Royce, Ranking Member Sherman, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for your interest in and support of this important initiative to help our nation combat transnational organized crime. I look forward to working with you to advance your legislation to provide new tools to counter transnational crime and protect our national security interests.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. Ambassador?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I'd like to thank you and the subcommittee members for your continued support and interest in the U.S. Department of State Rewards Program. We welcome the legislation that you've introduced, H.R. 4077, which would allow the Department of State to better use these programs to pursue and help bring to justice individuals who've committed acts of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The current War Crimes Rewards Program has been instrumental in bringing to justice some of the most notorious and brutal fugitives sought by the United Nations International Criminal Tribunals for Yugoslavia, the ICTY, and for Rwanda, the ICTR. In the last 2 years alone, we have made 14 payments at an average of $400,000 per payment, ranging from $75,000 to $2 million for information leading to the arrest and conviction of these fugitives. This program has been and continues to be very successful in generating information that has led to the arrest of the world's worst criminals. However, the present statutory authority of the War Crimes Reward Program is limited to fugitives from the ICTY and ICTR and the Special Court for Sierra Leone. From these tribunals, which indicted more than 250 people, there remain only 9 targeted fugitives at large, all from the Rwanda Tribunal. After the capture of these fugitives, this program will cease to be useful as a tool to ensure accountability. The State Department would like to expand this program to bolster our ongoing efforts to bring other alleged war criminals to justice. The proposed legislation, sponsored by you, Mr. Chairman, would do just that. It would authorize the Secretary of State to publicize and pay rewards for information leading to the arrest and conviction of specifically identified foreign nationals accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide before any international criminal tribunal, including hybrid or mixed courts. Let me be clear. Under the proposed authority, fugitives would only be added to the rewards program after careful review and approval by an interagency committee and the Secretary of State or a designee. This is similar to the interagency committee that now makes the decisions about the amounts of rewards to be granted and that makes decision about selection of individuals upon which rewards may be provided in the terrorism and narcotics programs. This committee would have representatives of the State Department, DOD, DOJ, DHS, and the intelligence community. I want to focus on a few specific cases where this authority would help our foreign policy objectives. You, Mr. Chairman, mentioned the case of Joseph Kony of the Lord's Resistance Army. As you noted, for 2 decades, he's carried on a campaign of murder and terror and the abduction and brainwashing of women and children, the women to become sex slaves, the boys to become fighters. The UN estimates that some 465,000 people were displaced or living as refugees across 3 countries in 2011 as a result of the LRA threat. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Joseph Kony and other top LRA leaders on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. And although the United States is not a party to the Rome Statute establishing the ICC, we support the ICC's efforts to bring the LRA leaders to justice and believe they could be apprehended and held to account for their actions. You mentioned the The group of U.S. military advisors, consistent with the LRA Disarmament and Northern Uganda Recovery Act, that have now been deployed in Central Africa and are working with our partners, particularly the Ugandans, but other forces as well in LRA-affected areas, helping to enhance the capacity to bring these top commanders to justice. The proposed expansion of the program would bolster our efforts to generate information about the whereabouts of Joseph Kony and other LRA commanders by giving lower-level fighters a material incentive to provide information. If Kony and other commanders were added to the programs through the interagency process I described, we could work to publicize the rewards using leaflets, radio broadcasts, and other publicity tools, like we've done with other fugitives. Another individual is Abdul al-Sanusi, the former head of Libyan military intelligence, who was the head of one of the most powerful and efficient organs of repression in Libya, and he's wanted for the ICC for his alleged responsibility for crimes against humanity committed last February. It's been reported that he's fled Libya and he's in hiding. Of course, this will allow awards not just in ICC cases, but to any court that has international presence as a mixed court or hybrid tribunal. It'll be crime-specific, not court-specific, and as required under our ASPA law, our American Service Members Protection Act, it'll be consistent with that in being a case-by-case determination that's allowed by ASPA, where we can provide assistance to international justice. The War Crimes Reward Program, at the moment, we're advertising rewards up to $5 million, although rewards up to $25 million could be paid in exceptional cases. But as I note, the average amount is some $400,000. And the amount of the award depends upon a number of factors, including which war criminal is apprehended, the quality of the assistance provided, and the risks taken by the informant. We believe that the funding for the rewards authorized by this new legislation could be provided from currently available resources and transfer authorities. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, the War Crimes Rewards Program is, and we hope will remain, a valuable asset to the U.S. in its fight to ensure that foreign nationals who commit serious violations of international humanitarian law are held to account, and will continue to work tirelessly to bring these perpetrators to justice. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before you and to thank you for your continued leadership in this area.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think it was back in 2004 that we commissioned some studies to look at the media and to see how we could better utilize technology in order to bring people to the bar of justice through this rewards program. I would just ask if there's been thought since then. Well, first, let's just maybe review what the studies told us. But now, with the advent of social media, maybe some thoughts on how that could be deployed in order to assist worldwide in these efforts. Could I get some responses?
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with you, Mr. Chairman. We don't want to die with a secret that we have these rewards on offer, and I've been involved in getting the message out in Central Africa through community radio and other media that people have access to there. But I think we need to leave no stone unturned to make sure that people are aware of these rewards, and we use every possible media that's effective with a specific population.
Well, one of the thoughts I have on this is the host government cooperation used to be needed. In 2010, I know that VOA began the process of actually broadcasting and could effectively do that whether or not you had the host government in support. Well, as you begin to look at the use of social media, again, you have the ability to work around whether or not the state thinks it's important to track down the Victor Boots of the world. And so I would appreciate any observations on that methodology.
Well, we would certainly be supportive of that, and we'll be glad to follow up and report to you. But I think the social media, I mean, it's true that throughout the world, even in areas where electric power isn't necessarily reliable, people are having access to the internet. There are hundreds of millions of subscribers to these sites, and we want to make sure that we get the information out there and that people understand it.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Ms. Darby?
Only to say that we absolutely agree that we need to use all of the publicity tools at our disposal, and that's an excellent recommendation and one we definitely will take into account.
One of the things I've thought about also is from a diplomatic aspect, when dealing with host countries, we have long-standing relationships with, you know, maybe countries like Italy where the Cosa Nostra is operating and no opposition. But when we begin to talk about organized crime, international, transnational organized crime operating out of Russia or operating out of China, you can run into a situation in the State Department where, you know, if you're overt, are you rocking the boat vis-a-vis the relationship with Russia and so forth? On the other hand, with these additional technologies that might be available to us, there's a way to get at the target without confronting the state. But I would just ask you on any experience in the past with resistance in the State Department to rocking the boat, if you will. I watched the reaction on the part of the Russian government just over this Victor Bout issue, and it truly was extraordinary, the errors they went to in order to try to suppress his apprehension, his transfer to custody, his conviction. So I know that some of these figures have their own supporters in certain host governments, and it has complicated efforts to bring them to justice.
If I just may add, with social networking, in December we held a press conference at the State Department with the Department of Treasury on announcing that Yassine al-Suri would be added to the list of the Rewards for Justice program. And at that time, working with an office within the Department of State, we actually tweeted that information. So we started using social network. And also we partnered with Voice of America as part of one of their broadcasts that goes into Iran and other countries in the region. We conducted a short interview with that program, and that has since been broadcast in that region. And we are now exploring the use of Facebook to get the message out even further.
One of the interesting aspects of Ms. Darby's testimony, and I think you all might agree, is the way in which the aspect of feeling hunted, being hunted, if you're a transnational, if you're a criminal, can cripple an organization. The idea that you can't depend upon the people in your organization, in your operation, because whatever you're paying them, it's not this amount of money. And so someone could turn on you. I was going to ask, in terms of the applicability of that to transnational organized crime, beyond the example you gave us, which was a drug cartel, if you could give us your thoughts on that.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, that's absolutely true. I mean, one of the benefits of rewards is to encourage informants to come forward, obviously. But the other chief benefit of a rewards program is disrupting the operations of these drug trafficking organizations, and with the new proposal on the table, transnational organized criminal organizations, forcing them to change the way they do business, which leaves them more vulnerable to law enforcement efforts to go after them. So absolutely, we would agree.
Well, thank you. I think my time's expired. I'll turn to Mr. Sherman.
Thank you. In the imagination of a few nationalists in Islamabad, everyone in Pakistan speaks Urdu. In reality, the Punjabi and Sindhi languages are spoken by far more people than Urdu. Are you reaching out in Pakistan only in the Urdu language, or are you equally reaching out in Punjabi and Sindhi, and Baluch for that matter? Or do you know? If you don't know, tell me you don't know, and I'll make you answer for the record.
Through Rewards for Justice, we reach out in all languages in Pakistan. Now, we do not have a program specific.
No, it can't be all languages.
Well, not the main primary languages.
So you're doing as much in Punjabi and Sindhi as you're doing in Urdu?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. We do not have a post-Pacific program in Pakistan, but We do have a program.
Well, what does it mean you don't have a post-specific
Well,
program?
in some countries like Afghanistan, we've partnered with the government to undertake an advertisement campaign in that
Right.
country. We have not done that in Pakistan.
So you're saying you don't advertise in Pakistan because,
No,
or you just don't it's just not a cooperative effort with the Pakistani
we
government?
advertise as far as a global program.
What are you doing to advertise in Pakistan and in what languages?
I know we push information on our website in the primary languages. I can get you the information of how that is divided up and in what languages, but
Other than website, what are we doing to inform Pakistanis?
we do not have a program in Pakistan, sir.
Wow. Is
In
there,
order
a,
as
is
for-
there a country where there are more, well, I guess you could also argue about Iran, but can you name many countries where there are more terrorists bent on killing Americans?
In
than-
order to have that program in Pakistan, we need the permission of the government of Pakistan to operate. in that country.
Have we asked have we publicized to the American people that a country getting over $1 billion in American aid is prohibiting us from distributing matchbooks?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
Well, perhaps this hearing could illustrate that and could be added to the list of things we'd expect to change. What formal action has been taken to ask the Pakistani government, if not for their help, at least for their permission, to buy advertising in local media outlets, to distribute matchbooks or whatever? Can you tell me what's been asked
I
for?
do not have that information.
That's the, okay, so the first question for the record is, in what languages do you have the web page, which I know the whole world's being wired, but you're here showing us the matchbooks. These guys are all dead. The guys that are still alive are mostly in Pakistan, and you don't do the matchbooks in Pakistan. So you'll want to respond for the record. Have we pushed the Pakistanis hard? Is it illegal for us to distribute matchbooks in Pakistan? If so, are we doing it in other languages? Speaking of matchbooks, I assume that these were in Arabic as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, it occurs to me and everyone that folks getting these rewards might find their country of origin to be a dangerous place. Does the State Department have the legal authority to provide visas as part of the reward? Visas to live in the United States?
All of our rewards, the information that's advertised indicates that we are willing to relocate the person who provides us the information or family members if it's determined that their lives may be in danger. We have worked.
But there's no guarantee that if you provide the information, the State Department will reach that conclusion. Let's say you do determine that their lives are in danger, and you find that no other country wants to give them refuge. Do you have the authority to give them permanent visas to live in the United States?
We have actually had cases where we've worked with, for example, with the FBI and the Department of Justice, where visas have been issued to the individuals who have provided us information.
But if we really provided the fine print on the website, the way you would in a securities offering, we would have to asterisk and say, whether or not we help you avoid death is subject to our sole determination as to whether you're in danger, and whether or not we can let you live in the United States, even if we think that's necessary for your protection, is subject to the determination of other agencies. I don't recommend necessarily that you put that on the website, but are both those statements true?
We work, the examples I gave are other agencies that we've worked with that we have issued for those individuals to come to the United States.
But first, if the person feels they're going to get killed and you don't agree with them, they're not getting a visa, even if they're getting the reward. And even if you think they're going to get killed, if you can't persuade other agencies to give them a visa, they're not getting a visa.
No, the visa would be issued by the Department of State.
Okay, so you work with those other agencies,
do
but
work.
you have the final determination.
Well,
So if somebody convinces state that they're going to get killed, you
We-
have the authority to do
we
something
have
about it.
our intergovernment rewards committee that is made up of various U.S. government agencies, law enforcement, intelligence, military, DOD, and that information is discussed, and that determination is made.
Please get back to me soon on Pakistan. How hard have we pushed? What is the official slam the door, not just to cooperation, but even to allowing us? I mean, I can buy an ad in a Pakistani newspaper selling a motorcycle, but apparently you can't buy one selling a reward. And so let's see, what have we asked for? What has been the response? How hard have we pushed? And what languages are we doing this website in? Although, if it's just a website, it's pretty much a secondary question. I yield back, and I thank the gentleman for thank the chairman for additional time.
We appreciate that. If we go to the Basic Authorities Act, Section 36, paragraph E, 5, the sense of it as written is if the Secretary determines that the identity of the recipient of a reward or members of the recipient's immediate family must be protected, the Secretary may take such measures in connection with the payment of the reward as the Secretary considers necessary to effect such protection. But it is my understanding that in the past there are a number of cases where that in fact has taken place. But as we work out the final language, if there's any additional thoughts on that, we'd be happy to work with the department. Let's go to Mr. Connolly for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harton or Ambassador Rapp, and welcome to all three of you. Were any of these programs used in the identification of the location of Osama bin Laden?
The Rewards for Justice was not. I mean, we advertised them through Rewards for Justice, but we did not pay a reward for information concerning Osama bin Laden.
Mr. Ambassador, you have no additional information?
Nothing, no further information.
Ms. Darby, with respect to the program under your purview, obviously we're growing increasingly anxious about what's happening in northern Mexico, southern part of our border, with respect to narcotics traffickers and uncontained violence, violence against public officials, law enforcement officials with impunity. Has your program been used in a situation in northern Mexico, and if so, how so?
Without getting into too much information on specific cases, I can tell you we certainly have used rewards. We've paid rewards and promoted, publicized rewards that have resulted in the bringing to justice of Mexican drug traffickers. For example, Javier Arellano Felix, head of one of the most violent criminal drug trafficking organizations in Mexico, was the subject to one of our rewards and was brought to justice. So yes, absolutely, sir.
And presumably we are coordinating with the Mexican government in the utilization of this program, among other levels of cooperation.
I don't know the specifics of that, sir. I imagine that's the case, but we'll get back to you with more detailed information on that.
I would appreciate that, because it seems to me if one were just looking at the situation and one was aware of your program, this rewards program, one would think it could be a very useful tool in the kit bag. So I think we would like to know a lot more about, well, how, without in any way jeopardizing ongoing activities, but in general, is it in fact effectively being deployed, and candidly, could it be expanded? Because I think there'd be, again, a fair amount of receptivity up here to doing just that, given what is happening on our southern border. Ambassador Rapp, you talked about a range of between $5 and $25 million, depending on certain circumstances, in your testimony.
What I said is our rewards have basically been between the ones that I've dealt with in the last 2 years, the 14, we've made an evaluation basically looking at 5 million as the maximum, and we've and these have involved like 12 different fugitives, 14 rewards paid. We made an evaluation in terms of the level of the person that was being brought in, the risk, et cetera, and made the award accordingly. And as I said, as we publicize the program and as it's been discussed at some length, we've viewed it as a $5 million program, though we understand that we could have the capacity in the truly extraordinary case to go to 25 million.
Okay. And you've sort of answered my question, which is, how does one decide the range? Yeah. You look at seriousness of the target and risk involved and so forth.
It's an you know, I mean, to some extent, some of the ones that we've had most recently have involved relatively lower level Rwandan individuals, certainly alleged to be responsible for very, very serious crimes. And then you know, if we were right now, for instance, there are 3 high-value fugitives of the Rwandan Tribunal, the former head of the Presidential Guard, Prote Mparanya, of Felician Kabuga, who was the head of Hate Radio, the chairman of it, and the alleged financier of the genocide, the former Minister of Defense. If those individuals were brought in, they would be potentially higher value because of the crimes for which they're alleged and the level of responsibility they have. And then we look at how much risk the individual took, what kind of risk they have, what kind of things they did in terms of it. There's 7 factors under our analysis as we come up with the number.
Very helpful. And perhaps you could give us those 7 factors for the record. In the very brief period of time I have left, I wonder if you could just, let's say I'm in the bush with John Coney, and I somehow hear about this program, and I want to do the right thing, and I want to help bring John Coney to justice. I'm a member of the LRA, and I'm far away from the capital city, perhaps, and modern communications. Can you walk me through what would such an individual have to do? What would be the process whereby that person might try to participate in the program and help us in our mutual goals?
Well, obviously, to the extent you have people that are truly being compelled against their will as slaves, and they have no access outside, indeed could be difficult. But people do periodically escape from Joseph Kony's control. That's one of the ways that we obtain some intelligence now. Now you've got another reason to get away when you hear about this, and to reach places where you could make a phone contact with the sort of information that we would then provide to you. The sort of contact information that we provided in the case of the Yugoslavia and the Rwanda tribunals, numbers that you can call, that kind of thing. People do have access to cell phones even in some very remote areas of Africa. So there are ways to do that, and that information could be certainly then acted upon much more quickly because of this operation in which we're providing advisors in cooperation with the governments out there and helping with intelligence and logistics in order to be able to operate on that quickly and potentially get an arrest. Of course, our program is focused on arrest and transfer and eventual conviction. This will pay if Mr. Coney or the other 2 commanders that are alive and that are also indicted are brought to justice, and then we'll evaluate what it's worth. First, of course, I should note that if we do get the expansion that's proposed here, we will be making a determination about these other courts. In the past, we've just said anybody indicted by the Yugoslavia Tribunal, Rwanda Tribunal, will pay a reward of some kind or another. If we get this authority, obviously we're going to have to deal with whether we want to pay it in all ICC cases, in some ICC cases, whether the Bosnia War Crimes Court has some fugitives that's a mixed chamber that we could pay in. We'll make that determination in the committee, then we'll publicize it, then we'll provide the access in ways that people can use it. And then if we get success, we'll pay it.
If the chair would allow one follow-up question, and hopefully it's a relatively brief answer, but how does it work operationally vis-a-vis the State Department here and the folks on the ground in embassies and consulates abroad? Are they actively promoting this program, and do they make material available in whatever the local language may be, or do they leave that up to sort of headquarters?
Well, I mean, we're involved with developing the materials and have contracts and work with people that can advise us on the most effective ways to do that. But I do want to salute Mr. Hartong's agency, the Diplomatic Security Bureau. We work very closely in all of our embassies with the regional security officers. And those people are, frankly, in a half a dozen embassies, regularly receiving information in our Rwanda program and evaluating and following it up and really then providing the real legwork in making this program work. So it's in Washington, but it's out in the field, and then whenever I'm in an area where there may be fugitives, we're doing everything we can to show the posters, to interview about it, to talk about the fact that this is a real program and people are being paid.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. It's a very interesting topic, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Ambassador, if we went back to the circumstances that we're talking about right now with respect to Joseph Kony, you have a situation where he has been indicted, where we have now passed legislation creating the wherewithal to bring him to justice, where we have passed legislation on disarmament, demobilization, reintegration. And one of the aspects of this that's interesting is the fact that there are increasingly ever larger numbers of defections. Now, if we turn back the clock to when he started as a warlord, there are a total of 65,000 children that he has abducted. But it's the use of technologies like mutilation that make him so feared, that create an environment in which people are fearful of coming forward. So if we create an incentive for people, and if they know as part of this legislation that they and their immediate families will be protected, if they also know that these defections are on the increase so that they're not alone, they can see the fact that the day will come when Kony and the other senior commanders are brought to the bar of justice, then there's more than one reason why this program could be effective. I thought you might speak to the thoughts of the State Department in this, and also the Department of Defense, which right now are working directly under the legislation that we passed out of this committee, are working directly with the Ugandan forces in order to retire this Lord's Resistance Army from the field, and tell us why they are enthusiastic about these changes in the legislation which we seek to make with this bill.
Well, I think you're quite correct, Mr. Chairman, that there are a lot of defections. There's a public campaign going on encouraging people to leave Kony. This would add, I think, a critical element in that, because at the moment, if people defect, they're interested in their own situation. Obviously, they want to take advantage of perhaps going back to Uganda and perhaps not having amnesty under the Ugandan law. They're looking out for their own interest after the horrible experience they've been through. This would add an element there where there would be a great incentive for them to provide information on where Kony was, what his favorite spots are, where he's likely to move, and by doing that, if that leads to his arrest, give themselves the opportunity for a substantial reward that can truly change the life of themselves and their family. And indeed, as we note, I mean, if people are going to be at risk, we can work to relocate them, and we've worked in a variety of ways. Sometimes not relocation to our country, but to other places with the other reward programs that we have. And so this would, I think, provide a real incentive to gather that information, to bring something useful in, and then for us to operate on it. And I think, as you note, AFRICOM, which is working on this in support of this military advisor mission, in which we're partnering with the regional forces, is extremely supportive of this legislation, and I think could help make this operation a success. And in the case of Kony, I mean, there are other movements where you may take out 2 or 3 people, and then somebody else pops up. I really do think if you take out Coney and these key commanders, that's the end of the LRA. This is a critical thing that we need to do.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ms. Darby, did you want to make any remarks on that subject?
I would just say that the U.S. law enforcement community is very excited about the prospect of having this tool. They've seen how effective the Narcotics Rewards Program in particular has been in helping them to capture criminals, bring them to justice, and they're very excited about the opportunity that's presented in your legislation.
Thank you. I think this is an issue we can solve, and if we persevere on it, I want to thank our witnesses for appearing here today. I want also to mention without objection that members may have 5 legislative days to submit their statements and questions, and if you don't mind responding to any additional questions, that would be appreciated. So this hearing now stands adjourned.